Amen. So this is going to be an awkward sermon for some of you. In fact, if I do my job right, this will be an awkward sermon for everyone in the room. And if this is not an awkward sermon for you, then at the end of the sermon, you have become the volunteer to help others who might need someone to walk with them in this area. As we choose to step into Jesus' teaching, we find that it affects every part of our life. We've had a few weeks of stuff. We had Epiphany. Do you remember that? 3 of you do. After Epiphany, what did we have? Thank you. We had Lent. Some of you have been to the church before and you know how it goes. And then what came after Lent? Thank you. Then Pentecost. And finally, this is not going to be on next week's quiz because you'd all fail, apart from 3 of you. What was after Pentecost? It was last week. Thank you, Trinity. Okay, it's been a memorable year here at St. George's as we've gone through the church seasons. And so now we step into what's called ordinary time. And that means I'm able to take a bit of a break from the Anglican merry-go-round of Epiphany, Lent, Easter, Pentecost, and Trinity. And whilst we look at Jesus' teaching right here from Matthew 6 in the Beatitudes, it can become a little bit more personal. It's not so much here looking at Jesus, or last week even looking at the Trinity and trying to understand God as Trinity. Today, I'm going to be deeply practical, and that is why it's likely to offend most people who are here. Because as you just heard in Matthew 6, page 1686 in your pew Bibles, which are the blue things in front of you at the end of the pew, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where we can look forward to there being no moths and no vermin, it says, my paraphrase there. But how many of us store up treasures on earth? And so I've titled today's talk, Spring Cleaning for Faith. I last preached on spring cleaning as a theme, or decluttering, about 8 years ago. And I'm trusting that some of you who were here then have accumulated more stuff since I last spoke on the subject. Is that fair? We have an insane amount of storage facilities in North America. It's what we do. Some of us have storage facilities in our home. They're called garages. They were designed to put a car in. But how many people have a garage that is empty enough to put a car in? A few. And often it's because you've got a double garage, right? And so half of it's full of stuff and half of it is for your car. And the city of Maple Ridge, we love you if you're watching, they have frequently exempted developers from the bylaws that require two parking spaces for every new townhouse that's built. And they say, as the exemption is, they'll have a tandem garage. So it still, on paper, has space for 2 cars, but in practice, how many people put 2 cars in their 2-car garage, especially when it's back-to-back like this? Maybe if one of the cars never moves. And so then we have parking problems on our streets, and there's never enough parking. And on paper, everything has followed all the rules. But in practice, everyone ignores the fact that we love stuff. And so we fill our garages with stuff. Maybe you haven't got a garage, you've got a shed. Maybe your shed is full and you bought an extra shed. And when it all goes a bit crazy, then what do? We outsource it to the storage places. If you look on Google Earth, or other systems are also available, Apple Maps will show you too, there's a whole bunch of land, and I was kind of wondering what's in there, and I was just looking one day. Have you ever done this? Get onto Google Earth and kind of fly over the city you live in and see what's where. And there's mountains of storage in the kind of square between 207 and 203rd, I think it is. There's a huge thing there, and then there's more down by the train tracks in the industrial park. And the thing about these storage places, and I'm probably touching a nerve here because some of you either have one or know someone that does, or have a family member that does, or have a parent that does, is that they'll give you a month for free. You can move your stuff in, that's no problem at all. It's no problem. We'll let you have a month for free. And then what happens the next month? Oh, well, it's a fee. I don't know how much you pay. $100 a month, maybe more. 250. There you go. Wow. And if you add up how much in Canada and the States that people spend on storing things that they don't use, because that's why they're stored off-site, it would be a fortune. What's this all got to do with the Bible? Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And we all come with all sorts of baggage around this. If you grew up in any kind of period of war or poverty, or, I remember coming from the UK, a number of people grew up and there was rationing and things weren't available. Maybe it's true for those of you from other parts of the world too. And so we hold on to things because, and this is the phrase, we might need it one day. Have you ever said that? We might need that one day. So we have struggles for different reasons. Maybe it's a sentimental struggle. Maybe it's an emotional struggle or a psychological struggle. As I said, if you have all of this sorted, then let me know later, and I'll make a list of people, if you're willing, to walk with others who would like to have someone help them with their stuff. Our reading from the gospel, and all this, where it specifically ties into, is all about trust. Because if we store our treasures on earth, we're putting our trust in physical things. Whereas if we store our treasures in heaven, we're putting our trust in the King of Heaven. And so this is all connected. I'm going to talk about physical things, I'm going to talk about digital things, I'm going to talk about spiritual things. And I'm hoping that this might be helpful. I have a few warnings as I go through, and I have a couple of things that I found as I was preparing to preach and doing some spring cleaning at home. Firstly, our physical things. We have our garages, our spare rooms, our closets, our attics, our lofts, our storage units, our sheds. Maybe all of that's full and you keep the trunk of your car full of spare stuff. And all of these things become a burden for us. I'm reminded with the verse about moths eating clothing because I've experienced that. And I know you might expect, I'm a priest, I'm going to have a holy sweater. I'm just practicing for my Father's Day jokes. And I have had multiple holy sweaters, and it's not because I prayed over them. It's because a moth has prayed over them. And it's so frustrating. And I've done all the things, and I've put the thing in the freezer, and, anyway. By the way, I should have said this at the start. At the end of the sermon, I'm going to share some stuff that's a bit personal. I mean, not crazy personal, but a little bit. I don't need you to give me advice on how to declutter. I'm just going to say that. So that normally is what happens if I share something and they're like, well, here's the solution, David. I'm not looking for 100 people to tell me how to organize my battery drawer. I do have a battery drawer. Hands up if you have a battery drawer in your house. Okay. And the rest of you have a junk drawer and you've got batteries in it, right? Stuff takes up so much of our time. The Little Mermaid said it best. I've got gadgets and gizmos aplenty. I've got who's its and what's its galore. You want thingamabobs? I've got 20. But who cares? No big deal. I want more. And there she was, under the sea. I think I changed key halfway through there, but never mind. she was under the sea, and she's got all her gadgets and gizmos aplenty, and she wants more, and so she wants to go up and be with the people so she can have even more stuff. Our storage spaces are so full of things we don't need, it takes forever to find them when we do, that we end up having to go out and buy more things. We think, I'm sure I've got one of these somewhere, but we go to the dollar store and buy it again. And so there's a bunch of people who write about spring cleaning and decluttering. Some of you have heard of Marie Kondo, the Japanese decluttering expert. She has shows on Netflix. So I've read that book more than once. And it's funny, isn't it? Because you think a decluttering book, and then I've kept it on my shelf. But there we go. There's a guy called Joshua Becker. And I got this one from the library, because now, since I bought that book, I now don't buy books if I can. I borrow them or ask someone else to read them and tell me what they say. So he's written a book called Own Less, Love More, Make an Impact in Your World. And I'm going to read, there's lots of good stuff in here. He's written about 6 books, I think, all on decluttering. Or as some people like to say, when people write more than one book, he's written one book 6 times, because they're all kind of similar. He says this, and I'm reading from the back just because it's a good summary. Consumerism competes for our attention daily, from social media influences to ads on streaming services to our friends' latest purchases. This obsession with storing up possessions is not new. Jesus taught his followers about it thousands of years ago, and some of those lessons are meant for us today. Possessions, and here's the thing, possessions seem to promise fulfillment, but instead we find that material abundance hinders us from living joyfully and realizing our full potential. Even more, our belongings become distractions that leave us empty and separated from the true source of life, Jesus himself. And I think what we're really good and bad at in the church is this. We basically, this is a generalization. This might be offensive. Get ready. But we basically are really good at trying to stay in step with the world and in step with the Bible, and generally it goes wrong. And so we go, how can I try and live out not storing my treasures on earth, and at the same time storing lots of treasures on earth? We tend to think we can have our cake and eat it. We're not exempt from the world selling us whatever the thing is that we'd like. Now, it might be that you have something you collect. I have more than one pair of shoes, as some of you know. And so, I'm not saying you can't have something where you have a collection. Stamps take up a lot less space than shoes. But anyhow, we shouldn't probably collect 10 different things, because then we'll have no space for them all. And I do think that often that is what happens, is we store up more and more and more things. And so me talking about this today is coming from a place of going, I have listened to folks at St. George's and elsewhere, Christians talk about how they struggle with stuff, how they're burdened, how when a loved one dies, be it a parent or a spouse, the decluttering that has to happen is a hugely stressful experience. And that's why I wanted to talk about this today. For people who have got rid of some stuff, who try to live more simply, you could call it minimalism or simple living or whatever you like, they find that life is more organized and ordered. And then they have more time. So I had a little look at home to see, did I have any clutter? And I did actually find some clutter, so I thought I'd bring some of it to share. So I have the manual in 12 different languages of how to install the roof bars on my car. So if you ever want to learn Polish or a number of other languages, so you feel free to borrow this one. I have the, looks like a pencil case, but I think it's to put one of these Shure microphones in. I'm never going to be taking a microphone with me. I'm never going to need to put it in a pouch. But it was a nice pouch, and so I kept it. And inside the pouch today, I bought for you, in my battery drawer, I found 6 sets, 3 of them completely unused, of Air Canada headphones. If you need them, these are available to you today. You don't even need to donate any money to the church. You can just take them. I found an old pair of glasses with a cleaning cloth that's probably about as old as this building. And I found an empty box with no glasses in it. And that was just a few things. How easy it is for us to accumulate things that fill space. And now I've removed those things from my battery drawer. It is much more organized. But it's not just physical stuff, it's digital stuff. Time and again, people will say to me, oh, I don't get your emails, David, because I get too many emails. And many of us get so many emails all the time from all sorts of people. The only emails that affect your eternity are probably the ones coming from your church. You could argue. So probably the email that comes from Rachel letting you know what's happening, or Roxanne or myself, is probably the most important email you're going to receive that week. But if it's lost in the sea of emails telling you about sponsorships that FIFA have done with Adidas, or the latest deal at Save on Foods because it's $1.49 day on Tuesday, not this week. Don't get you'll all go in. My pastor said it was $1.49 day, not this week. But our email boxes clog up with things. And all of them at the bottom have the word unsubscribe. So if you don't know how to unsubscribe from the emails that you signed up for that you didn't want in the first place, by the way, don't unsubscribe from church emails, because then you won't know what's going on here. But if you're a part of St. George's. But if you don't know how to do that, then ask someone at church and they'll show you a trick. If you're around on Thursdays and you're over 55 or something like that, our Oasis group regularly has people who will come along, namely Becky, but others could probably help you too, and show you how you can unsubscribe from things. Because as you do that, I now have got my emails down. I get about 5 emails a day that I don't really want. That's all. And that's because I've just unsubscribed from all these people trying to sell me things that I don't need to buy. And it all ties together. Because once we've unsubscribed from the emails trying to sell us things that we didn't know we needed to buy, then we find that we're not buying as much stuff. And when we're not buying as much stuff, we find our house, our home, our lives are less cluttered. It's not just that, though. We're putting everything into the cloud, and the cloud just sounds wonderful, doesn't it? The cloud sounds like, did you see the sky yesterday? There were some lovely clouds up there. It sounds like one of those nice, blue sky and a lovely little white, fluffy cotton wool cloud. The cloud is actually a big data center, which is being built, destroying farmland all across the world. And that's what the cloud is. It's huge warehouses with beautiful farmland destroyed for storing our information. Information that we need? No, information that we don't need to delete, because I'll just put it in the cloud. And when our storage fills up, we can just buy a bigger cloud. 50 gig, 100, I don't know, whatever it is. How big is your cloud? That's an interesting question. And so it goes on. And apps. Do you have apps on your phone? Oh, how many apps? And every time you go to something, you need to get the app. You used to be able to go shopping and just walk into a store and buy something. Now you have to download the app in order to get the deal, load it onto your account, and it's even worse. When I did a recent trip to London, I went to a coffee shop, and it was like one of those kind of funny sketches you see. I couldn't buy a coffee from the person. I had to scan the QR code to download the app to order my coffee. And then, of course, I found it wasn't available on the Canadian App Store, and so I went somewhere else where I could just hand them some money. But that's kind of what the world is becoming like. You know, you can delete apps too. Delete the apps. You can always download them again. And so when we have our house that's been wonderfully decluttered, our phones and our devices that are not full of files that we're storing in a big data center and then paying for, our emails where we're getting the ones that actually matter to us, we find that our decluttered life is much simpler. Jesus says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal." And yet, why do we keep on doing it? It's because it's the swimming pool that we're in. We swim in the culture of consumerism. Buy more. Buy me, and I'll change your life, is the marketing of Selfridges, the big department store. But the truth is, the way our stuff that we buy changes our lives is it becomes a burden, and then it becomes too much to deal with. And so we outsource it and pay someone else to do it. The process of getting rid of things can be really helpful. So let's just assume this afternoon it's raining and you decide you're not going to go for your hike and you're going to start decluttering. What do you do with all the stuff? Listen to this very carefully. Do not bring it to church. Please. The 10 years I've been here, I have decluttered so much stuff that people have dropped off with wonderful hearts over the years. Chairs with a wobbly leg, envelopes that don't really stick. Could you use this at the church? If you're getting rid of it from your home because it's been in your garage for 10 years, we probably don't need it at the church. You can take stuff to the thrift store, and I recommend the Mission thrift store, which is not in Mission, it's in Maple Ridge, but it's a thrift store that supports mission work, and through the sales of your old things, not only do they bless somebody who spends less money buying it secondhand than they would new, but then the money is given to support buying Bibles and sending them around the world and that sort of thing. And the Mission thrift store is where Thrifty Foods used to be. I always think it would have been a lot easier if they just took off the Y. Yeah, that's a slow one, that one. So they can take stuff 10 till 4, Monday to Saturday, and not on Sundays. So today you can declutter, and tomorrow you can give them all your stuff that you don't need anymore. And it can bless other people. I've said a lot of things here. And really the idea was to try and wind you up a bit. Really the idea was to try and make you think. And as you go home, what are those things that you don't need? What are those things that you're holding on to? And if you find that there's something deeper, if you're holding on to that outfit that you might just fit into one day, or the car that you might just fix and drive one day, or the project that for 30 years you've been thinking you're going to fix that old radio and you haven't, maybe it's time for a reality check. And maybe you need to have a conversation with someone, perhaps one of us at the church, around what's beneath it. Because stuff, we hold on to stuff, I think, mainly because either we haven't thought about it, or because it's trying to fix a problem. It's trying to be something for us. And as Jesus says here in the Beatitudes, as you don't have things, then you don't need to worry about your life, what you eat or drink or what you'll wear. Look at the birds. They don't worry about what they're going to wear. They're not so stressed about all these physical things. And yet the Father looks after them. So all this ties back to our spiritual lives, and what it is that affects our physical, affects our emotional, affects our spiritual. So at coffee today, stay after church, have a coffee, eat some cookies, have a cup of tea, talk to somebody and say, is there one thing that you might do? Maybe it's a physical decluttering. Maybe it's going to the library and grabbing one of the books by various Christians that have written books on how that affects faith. Maybe it's the digital decluttering. Maybe it's unsubscribing from all those emails, trying to sell you things you can't afford and don't want anyway. Maybe there's something deeper as well, and you'd like to have a conversation with myself or Roxanne or someone at the church about that. So a few things to think about. We're going to pray in a moment, and as we do, maybe if you are aware of something, you could actually ask for prayer for that. Say, I really struggle holding on to stuff. Would you just ask the Lord to help me be released from that burden? So we'll do that in a moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pray now, and then I've got a few words and pictures that the prayer team shared earlier, and then I'll tell you what's happening next. So why don't we just close our eyes and pray? Lord, as we hear from Matthew 6, help us if we're not sure about our treasures. Help us to store up treasures not on earth, but to store up treasures in heaven. And would you help us as we go from here today to deal with the practical nature of what we've been thinking about? Lord, if there's things that are holding us back, costing us time and money, weighing on our mind, would you help us to deal with them so that we might walk tomorrow freer from all that so easily burdens and entangles us? In Jesus' name, amen.